the tragic humanitarian conditions of the people in Gaza, deceived families, collected money from them, and facilitated their travel in an irregular and irresponsible manner. However, the embassy has appreciated the sovereign and human decision of the South African government to grant 90-day entry visas for those who opted to stay in the country. The Gauteng provincial government in South Africa says it is ready to welcome heads of states and government for the much-anticipated G20 Leaders Summit next week. President Cyril Ramaphosa, leaders from the GPG and the city of Johannesburg are leading a CEO's cleaning campaign in Soweto as part of the final touches for the summit. Speaking to the SABC News on the sidelines of the president's visit, the Gauteng provincial government spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga says it's all systems go for the gathering of the most industrialized nations. He says they have tested both the security and infrastructure for the event.
As Gauteng, we are ready to host the G20 Leaders Summit. We have done everything that the President said we needed to do. Yes, he's still monitoring. There are some issues that we're still ironing out, but we are ready. We have done all the infrastructure preparedness. We have also, coordinated with our accommodation, the hotels. They're all ready to receive our guests. The ports of entry have been checked several times. They're all ready in terms of the processing of people with speed. There are dedicated lanes inside the ports of entry to make sure that people are able to come in with ease. We've also prepared our tourism offering for people not to just come, do the summit and leave, but we want them to spend their money and leave it behind because we want them to enjoy what we have to offer as a province.
And lastly, a rocket owned by the Amazon founder Jeff Bezos has successfully launched from Florida on its first flight for a paying customer. It was carrying 2 NASA satellites bound for Mars, where they'll collect information about its climate. The BBC's Aina Eslam.
Liftoff detected. Transmotion.
That's the moment the New Glenn rocket blasted off from Cape Canaveral in Florida. It successfully deployed NASA satellites that will reach Mars in 22 months to measure the planet's atmosphere and magnetic field. It's the first science payload Blue Origin has launched for a paying customer, and the company had another breakthrough too, when 9 minutes into the flight, the reusable booster powering the rocket separated and touched down on a floating barge in the Atlantic Ocean.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, the DR Congo as well as Nigeria will face off in a crucial World Cup playoff qualifier this coming Sunday, while India bowls South Africa out for 159 in the first test in India. Details coming out at 12:30.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Update only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you to Onel Ntinzi with our news update and Msebudi Makura with our sports headlines. It is 12:07 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app available on the Apple and Google Play stores. Now join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406-9126 hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Stay tuned to Channel Africa. Stream us on our new and updated website, channelafrica.co.za.
Well, today on hashtag Africa Update Ask, we focus on the United States and Argentina boycotting the G20 summit scheduled to take place in Johannesburg next week. Argentina's President Javier Milei abruptly withdrew from the summit, aligning himself with the U.S. call for a boycott of the gathering. Now, our question to you today is, should South Africa be concerned if countries align themselves with the United States and drop out of attending the G20 schedule for next week? Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406 9126. Hashtag Africa Update Us.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Now, 153 Palestinian travelers have been allowed into South Africa after being initially denied entry at Johannesburg's O.R. Tambo International Airport. The group, who arrived on a chartered flight from Kenya, were held at the airport due to incomplete documentation. But after intervention from the charity Gift of the Givers, they were admitted into the country. The travelers are eligible for 90-day visa-exempt travel and will be cared for by Gift of the Givers. The Border Management Authority says it will continue to uphold South Africa's legal and regulatory frameworks. And for more, we are joined by Africa for Palestine Communications and Campaigns Manager, Ali Kumapi. Ali, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu, and good afternoon to your listeners, and thanks for having us.
Now, Ali, just take us through what may have gone wrong in the communication between Global Airways and South African authorities, leading to this initial denial of entry for the 153 passengers, despite allegedly meeting immigration requirements.
The first thing, Lulu, is that Palestinians are living a genocide, it's not even like a war zone. They're escaping a place where they're being killed in their thousands. Now, that creates an agency on their part. So when they do speak to other countries, countries have laws, have regulations, and so on. We've seen this happening in Rwanda, in the Rwanda genocide, when many Rwandans were flocking into Uganda, into DRC, and so on. We've seen it with the collapse of the economy of Zimbabwe. We've seen it with the war in the DRC, where Congolese nationals came to South Africa in their thousands. It happens, and it's not out of the ordinary. But in this particular instance, what the South African authorities have told us is that this airline has been doing shady work, in essence. They've not been declaring passengers who are on the flight. They've not been complying with travel laws of border entry, and that was the problem. Therefore, the South African authorities had to take time in looking into vetting these Palestinians who are coming in, checking if they have documents and so on. For instance, some of the Palestinians who came in have nothing but clothes on their backs. They've got no documentation. They've got absolutely nothing. So the South African authorities had to take time to process them. So I think even we must get the wording right, Lulu. They were not denied entry. They were not told to go back to their homes. No, the South African authorities said, you're here, let's then take time to process you into the country. And that's what happened.
So basically it was a delayed entry for proper processes to be followed. Now, with the immigration, South Africa's immigrations, do you think that now that they have been, they were able to be a little flexible, as you're highlighting, that some people had just literally the clothes on their backs? What do you think? The big question is, who chartered this airline?
I think those are the right questions to ask. The European Union has done some investigation into this. It seems there is a covert operation by the Israeli regime to depopularize Gaza. They are doing this covertly in taking Palestinians out of Gaza and taking them to other countries across the world, covertly. For instance, the African authorities said we didn't know that these are Palestinian refugees coming to us. In fact, the South African authorities saying, why do you then take them to Kenya, then reroute them to South Africa, make it look like the origin of these refugees are from Kenya, when in fact they are from Palestine. The information is not given hands for the authorities that say we have Palestinians that are coming. They are coming to the embassy of Palestine in the country has said we have no idea as well that this is happening. But of course, this, like I said, this is not an ordinary situation. People are fleeing a genocide. So we don't know the origin of this plane. But what we do know from the preliminary examination done investigation done in Europe is that there is a covert operation in Gaza done by the Israelis to depopulate Gaza. Of course, this is not a surprise to many of us internationally. Israel has said many times they want to wipe Palestinians in Gaza off the map. Failure to do that, they want to ship them out to other countries. They've proposed to ship Palestinians out to Egypt. They've proposed to ship them out to Lebanon. They've proposed to take Palestinians to other neighboring countries in the Middle East. So that's their plan, and that's what they're doing. So even in us, dealing with the issue of refugees of Palestinians, which is correct, which we must do, we must not then ignore the fact that international law is being broken by Israel by forcibly taking people off their land and bringing them somewhere else.
And just the timing of this, listening to Imtiaz Suleiman speaking of the fact that the timing of this is very interesting because it's literally a few days before the G20 summit that is to take place here in South Africa next weekend. This is very interesting.
It's very peculiar. I mean, this is just a preliminary investigation that has showed this is the COVID operation. In fact, Lulu, we know for a fact that Gaza is an open air prison. Palestinians were slaughtered and they were refused to leave Gaza through land, air, or sea. Palestinians in Gaza are bussed out to go to Israel. Then in Israel, they're given a flight out to Kenya. Then the flight in Kenya is being rerouted to South Africa. It's very peculiar. If South Africa can take Palestinians who are willing to come to South Africa for refugee status, wonderful, great. We've done it with Zimbabweans, we've done it with Congolese, we've done it with Rwandans. We are that country that takes in refugees. There's no problem with that. Now, but like I said, we cannot ignore the background noise that comes with it. These ulterior motives. Why all of a sudden are Palestinians allowed to leave Gaza? Why are they chaperoned by the Israeli regime? Why are chartered flights being organized covertly? It is peculiar, but that must not overshadow the fact that Palestinians that seek refuge have a home in South Africa. Yeah. And the South African authorities, even ourselves as citizens of this country, have said, great. Bring them here. Yesterday at OR Tambo, you had many South Africans carrying diapers, food, formula for them, medicine. And because Palestinians are part of our identity as a nation that fought against apartheid.
Yeah. Well, Ali, it's been a pleasure. We'll leave it there for today. That's Africa for Palestine Communications and Campaigns Manager Ali Komapi ending that discussion.
Global leaders, African insights. Follow the G20 summit with Channel Africa as it happens.
It is 16 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our Civic Route Advocacy and hashtag Not In My Name International has dismissed allegations that civic groups may be mobilized to destabilize or disrupt the G20 proceedings. It comes a week ahead of the G20 to be held in South Africa. And to discuss this further, we are joined on the line by Siabulela Gentil, the Director of Civic Route Advocacy and President of hashtag Not In My Name International. Siabulela, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu, and thank you so much for the call.
Now, you strongly rejected these allegations. Can you tell us exactly what these allegations are and how they all came about?
Sure. Just as a quick disclaimer that I, made these comments in my personal capacity as a South African activist who's dedicated years, working to strengthen civic participation and advancing accountable governance and, defending the integrity of democratic spaces in South Africa. So the recent allegations that have surfaced for me have been very concerning. There's a perception, or rather, there's certain groups of people in the country who are saying that civic groups may be mobilized to destabilize or disrupt the G20 proceedings in South Africa. And I, believe that South Africa has fought too hard and lost way too much to allow its democratic institutions to be manipulated for geopolitical agendas that do not serve the interests of its people. So my call has, been to say that we cannot allow such perceptions to go unchallenged. So there needs to be investigations into those allegations. We are not necessarily, or I'm not necessarily saying that in the absence of evidence, those remain just allegations, and we cannot, go around spreading such sensitive and serious matters without any proof. Excuse me. Yes.
Now, you're calling on South Africa to remain vigilant. Exactly what should they be looking out for? So,
we really need to have a balanced approach to this issue. Vigilance can still happen without necessarily, repressing. We can protect the G20 and its processes and still protect the right to dissent, right? So the danger in all this is allowing suspicion to silence legitimate activism. So you've got civic groups that will be busy with protests or are busy with protests, whether it's actual protests or with pickets or with postering or whatever else activity or advocacy activity that people are carrying out. That can still happen, but still keeping the integrity of the G20 as host intact without necessarily disrupting it. And so when I say that the South Africa needs to be vigilant, that there needs to be transparency in protecting the genuine civic work that is happening in the country, and any harmful agenda must be exposed. But however, the allegations must still be tested through due processes, not speculation. So we must not allow people to mushroom and say that NGOs are being paid to destabilize the G20 without any proof or facts. Civil society remains the backbone of accountability, democratic participation, and community empowerment in South Africa. So NGOs should not be demonized, and activists or community organizations should not be demonized without any clear evidence, and we really need to be careful about that.
Now, what does the G20 mean to you as a civil society movement? Just in wrapping up.
Look, it's a platform. It's one of the high level platforms we should believe that will move. Will shift the global life forward. We're fast becoming a global village, and South Africa plays a critical role in geopolitics, and so it's very important that we allow these processes to take part or to take place in South Africa. Remember, it's the first time this is happening, and so we really need to, be patriotic and allow South Africa to host this in a dignified manner. Not saying that the concerns that have been raised by colleagues are not legitimate. However, as a civil society in South Africa, this thing means it's very important to us, and so we really need to protect the dignity of the G20 while raising our issues in a lawful and constitutional manner. So what it means for me is that South Africa is a key player, and it needs to be supported in whatever efforts. And we hope that the outcomes of these deliberations from world leaders will indeed move South Africa forward and assist the different citizens of South Africa in various communities.
Siyabulela, thank you for joining us. We'll leave it there for today. That was Siyabulela Gentile, the Director of Civic Root Advocacy and President of #NotInMyName International, joining us on the line.
The G20 Summit through African eyes, live updates, and expert voices only on Channel Africa.
As South Africa gets ready to host the first Group of 20 gathering on the continent, a recent report showed that 8 in 10 South Africans believe the country is heading in the wrong direction. The United States has pulled out from attending the G20, citing a genocide against Afrikaners. South Africa has been labelled a mafia state, while the water and energy infrastructure across the country crumbles. And to discuss this further, we are joined on the line by Terence McNamee, a geopolitical analyst and a senior fellow of the Montreal Institute for Global Security. Terence, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon.
Now, let's first talk about the article you penned in this week's cover story of the American publication, The Christian Science Monitor, questioning if South Africa can revive the goal of being a non-racial democracy. Do you believe the country can achieve this goal, and how would it need to be done?
Thanks. There's been many things written about South Africa's politics, South Africa's economy, but my story was a bit different. In some ways, it's the story about the story. So the transition story of South Africa from a brutal racial oligarchy into this non-racial democracy. And this was a story that, you know, the new government, the new democratic government in the 1990s was able to leverage for very significant positive impact, both domestically and internationally. And what I try to unpack in the cover story for the Monitor is what happened to that story. It's never talked about anymore, and it's virtually disappeared. And this is a real danger, I think, for South Africa, because as you know, nature abhors a vacuum, and into the vacuum, we see all these other stories that are flooding in, different visions of the future. And what they all have in common, unfortunately, unlike the transition story, the Rainbow Nation story, is that they are exclusive visions of the history, whether it's the Afrikaner nationalists or the radical economic transformation. All of these stories paint a vision of the country that excludes other groups. And I think that's what I was trying to get at in this story.
Do you feel you achieved your goal?
Well, I hope I sensitize people to this issue. And again, you know, the problem with a story, I use the metaphor of a garden, like a garden that you plant. And if you don't take care of that garden, if you don't prune it, if you don't water it, if you don't pick out the weeds, then essentially that garden or that story, to use the metaphor, is going to grow wild or it's going to wilt and die. And if that dies, I think that is really not just a loss for South Africa, but it's a loss for humanity, because this was a story that really inspired the world in the 1990s. And it showed that perhaps regardless of whatever tensions or divisions you have in society, that they are bridgeable. And that was the South African story that really inspired the world in the 90s. And over the last 15 years in particular, it's been marginalized, delegitimized, and I fear that it's almost disappearing.
Now, on to the G20 and just the issues surrounding the U.S. president and the U.S. delegation. You know, what do you make of the fact that the U.S. is saying that they have said that they will not send anyone to attend the event, despite them taking over the G20 chairmanship for next year? You know, what does this mean, and how does this then not only shed light on the U.S. and how they are handling issues that they're not happy about, and how should then South Africa respond to this?
Well, first and foremost, this was the President Trump and the administration telegraphed their absence from as soon as they came into office. And as we know, South Africa has been the target of President Trump's ire on a regular basis for the last 7 or 8 months. And this is for very different reasons. This may have to do with the ICJ case, or it may have to do with domestic politics in the United States and you know, the U.S. culture wars, and how in particular this sort of white genocide issue folds into that quite seamlessly. But I think the bigger question relates to, yes, the United States is not going to be there, but I think we have to look at the utility and the efficacy of the G20 as a whole. It's gone very far from its original roots. And my own sense is that it has to get back to those roots, or it stands the risk of becoming irrelevant.
And let's just go back and talk about the fact that the white genocide is alleged, because it has not been proven that there is a white genocide in South Africa. I think also just moving on to Argentina's president, Javier Milei, who's also now abruptly, but which was kind of expected, because as soon as the US had made they had pronounced their move, then there was an expectation that Argentina would move in that direction. Did you believe that he was going to do it, and as a president of a country and very aligned to the US?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was clear that the president of Argentina would follow in President Trump's footsteps, but it is worth noting that he is sending, I think, the foreign minister, and they will have a delegation there. So it's not a complete boycott, as it were. But I think, again, the bigger concern is not these individual dropouts. And I don't even think South Africa in particular is the big issue here. But the question is, these global fora in general are really losing their luster. I mean, if you look at the big climate summit in Brazil at the moment, I mean, I think besides the host Lula, there's no other world leader there. Whereas 10 years ago in Paris, I think every world leader was there. So I think the bigger concern is, what is the real utility? Do we have too many of these kind of talk shops? And again, remember, let's just look back to recent G20s. I mean, does anyone remember what substantive came out of Brazil or India? Or again, I think we have to ask some sort of tough questions about these type of gatherings going forward.
Now, with the spotlight on South Africa at this point in time, can the country's government restore public trust? Do you believe that this is a possibility? And if it is, what does the South African government need to do to ensure that they achieve this?
Yeah, I think the first step, of course, is in restoring public trust is to be honest with the population. And I think that's been the big challenge, not just in South Africa, but in other parts of Africa, is that we are knowing more and more about the failings. We're knowing more and more about the things that are going wrong. And that's a good thing. So we have more transparency. We have more commissions, whether that's into policing or the judicial system. But the problem, of course, is you have transparency, but you don't have the other side of the equation, and that is accountability. So it's transparency without accountability. And I think you need both sides of the coin for public trust to be restored, whether it's South Africa or another country. And I think that this is really, really one of the great challenges of democracy in general, and why people are losing faith is because they're becoming more and more aware of all of the challenges and problems, but they're not seeing, frankly, enough people behind bars.
Well, Terence, we have run out of time and are going to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update. That's Terence McNamee, a geopolitical analyst and senior fellow of the Montreal Institute for Global Security, joining us on the line. Our news headlines up next with Onel Nzinzi.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. With just a week before the start of the G20 Leaders Summit in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa says he is happy at the country's preparedness to host the meeting of the most industrialized nation. He was speaking to media during a walkabout at the Walter Sisulu Square of Dedication in Soweto, south of Johannesburg, earlier. The Palestine Embassy in South Africa has advised its people from Gaza to be vigilant when engaging organizations or any unofficial intermediaries when traveling for whatever reasons. In a statement, the embassy says travel arrangements of the group of the over 100 people who arrived in South Africa yesterday seeking refuge status were arranged by an unregistered and misleading organization. And a rocket owned by the Amazon founder Jeff Bezos was successfully launched from Florida on its first flight for a paying customer. Channel Africa News, I'm Onel Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And it's a very good afternoon from the sports desk. I am Musibu Dimakura with your latest sports news at the Sawa. We'll start with football news. Nigeria, as well as the Democratic Republic of Congo, will meet in Sunday's CAF World Cup playoff final in Rabat in Morocco, with the winners advancing to next year's FIFA Intercontinental Playoff and keeping their FIFA World Cup 2026 dream alive. Now, the match will be played at the Stade Prince Moulay Al Hassan Stadium, and kickoff for that game is at 8 p.m. Central African time. The Super Eagles arrive with momentum after a dramatic 4-1 extra time win over Gabon last night. Now, the three-time African champions have now put themselves 90 minutes from the Intercontinental Shootout that offers Africa's 10th ticket to 2026. Meanwhile, opponents, the DR Congo, advanced the hard way, edging Cameroon 1-0 thanks to a stoppage time finish from captain Chancel Mbemba. Now, the winners will then move to a 6-team FIFA Intercontinental Playoff in March of next year, and 2 spots are available for the world stage, while the losers will see their route to 2026 coming to an end. On to some cricket news now. So pace spearhead Jasprit Bumrah claimed a 5-wicket haul as India bowled out South Africa for 159 on day 1 of the first test against India earlier on today. So electing to bat first at the Kolkata Eden Gardens, the reigning World Test champions South Africa lost regular wickets to survive just 55 overs of play. Now, South Africa are without key pace bowler Kagiso Rabada, who has been ruled out of this game due to a rib injury. Aiden Markram as well as Ryan Rickleton started briskly in a 57-run opening stand just before falling to Bumrah. India soon seized control with spinner Kuldeep Yadav as well as fast bowler Mohammad Siraj taking 2 wickets apiece. So just looking at the action at the moment, India on 32 for the loss of 1 wicket. It is Washington as well as Rahul currently at the crease for South Africa with Keshav Maharaj. At the crease for India with Keshav Maharaj. They're bowling for South Africa, still trailing South Africa by 127 runs. So we'll keep you updated of this match throughout the course of the afternoon. On to some rugby news now. Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus made about 11 changes to his starting 15 in their year-end test against Italy on Saturday. Flanker Siya Kolisi will captain the new-look team in Turin, Italy. The bench sees a 6-2 split with Grant Williams as well as Mani Libok, the only backs amongst the replacements, while number 7 Ben Jason Dixon will play in his first test this season with Marco van Staden at number 8. Erasmus has a lot of faith in a relatively inexperienced front row of Fenta, Hobla as well as a young Zachary Porthen, and this is what he had to say about the team selected in the build-up to tomorrow's match.
Definitely we are saving, Thomas a little bit for the Irish Test match, because we won't have him after that match when we play Wales, because that's outside the window. We felt Buan is now on cap 7 and he's doing pretty well. Grobbies is on cap 5 or 6. He did really well when he came on, even only for 5-6 minutes. And then again, Zach has played 1 match for us. But on the bench, there's nice security in the 2 props that's always played together, Gerard and Wilco. And then obviously Marco is our cover at hooker.
Meanwhile, as well as Edward van der Merwe will play on the wings with Ethan Hooker as well as Kenan Moody patrolling the midfield after a difficult clash against France and a very tough travelling programme. Erasmus is excited to see what the younger players can do against one of the best Italian sides in recent history.
With the 2 boys, Damien and Jesse coming off that physical battle against France, although we won and we were down to 14 men, it really took a lot out of the guys, and the travel schedule from there was really pretty tough. It was late nights to get here, early morning flights and bus trips, and so the training on Monday was tough for the guys. They were really stiff, but the guys who's playing, is pretty young.
Right, so let's wrap it up with some netball news now. South Africa's national netball team will kickstart 2026 with a Spa Challenge, a 3-test series against the Vitality Roses of England in January at the Ellis Park Indoor Arena in Johannesburg in the Gauteng province. Now, the last time South Africa faced England at home was back in 2023 during the Quad Series in Cape Town in the Western Cape province before facing them again during the Netball World Cup the same year at the same venue. The head coach of the side, Jenny van Dijk, has already faced the Vitality Rose twice already during the Nations Cup in 2024, where they lost 61-55 and won 61-59. Now, the two nations will play each other between the 29th of January and the 1st of February 2026 at the Ellis Park Indoor Arena, with the English set to arrive in the country 2 weeks earlier. That's a wrap from the Sports Desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, give us a call on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Le monde entier a les yeux rivés sur Johannesburg. Les dirigeants des plus grandes économies mondiales se réunissent pour prendre des décisions qui façonneront les nations, les marchés et l'avenir. Vous savez déjà que Channel Africa sera sur place pour vous proposer des débats, des analyses et des points de vue essentiels. Suivez le sommet du G20 les 22 et 23 novembre en direct de l'Afrique. Restez connectés sur Channel Africa.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon. With less than 10 days to go before the G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg, South Africa, Minister in the Presidency, Kumbuzon Chabeni, has declared that preparations are on track and the country is ready to host the first ever G20 Summit on African soil. The minister was briefing the media on Thursday regarding the outcomes of a cabinet meeting held recently.
For us, it's not unique. Their absence is not unique to South Africa. And they can say all sorts of things, but we are hosting the G20. A number of leaders and countries are participating fully, and we are confident that we should achieve what we call a declaration from the summit. But also, I serve in the security cluster. The security cluster is also ready. We have had the G20 as indicated. We've had more than 130 events. They've been incident-free. And South Africa has successfully hosted previous events, and we are confident we'll deliver on this.
One South African political party, Rise Mzansi, will today picket outside the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition in Pretoria, calling for urgent reforms to the country's gambling laws. The party plans to hand over a memorandum of demands outlining the party's 7-point plan to overhaul the gambling industry. The party's action comes after the National Gambling Board revealed a $117.421 billion turnover in the 2024-25 financial year, which was largely driven by online betting. Rise Mzansi says gambling continues to destroy the lives of vulnerable groups and is calling on the DTIC to regulate online gambling advertising as well as prohibit the spending of all types of social grants. The party's parliamentary whip, Makashule Ghana.
We're calling for the reduction of the advertising hours so that the times that children and the vulnerable groups are listening to radio or watching TV, there's no gambling advertising. We're calling for the review of the tax regime governing the gambling industry and an introduction of a sin tax. We're also calling for the amount that the gambling industry spends on advertising and marketing, that at least 40% of that budget should go towards responsible gambling and educating South Africans.
The State Cobalt Agency in the Democratic Republic of Congo has produced its first 1,000 metric tons of traceable artisanal cobalt. The move is a key step in formalizing the sector in a country that supplies much of the world's battery metal. DRC holds about 72% of global cobalt reserves and accounts for over 74% of supply, much of it from informal artisanal mines. Artisanal mining is a lifeline for DRC, employing an estimated 1.5 million to 2 million people and supporting more than 10 million people indirectly. In East Africa, South Sudan's Petroleum Ministry has confirmed that it has requested for a total of $2.5 billion in oil-backed loans from two international firms operating in the country. The total amount requested is larger than the government's annual budget, which is less than $2 billion, and the roughly $2.2 billion the UN estimates South Sudan has received in oil-backed loans since independence in 2011. And the U.S. has announced trade deals with Argentina, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Ecuador. The four South and Central American countries have agreed to open their borders to U.S. products in exchange for tariff relief on some food items and other imports. The nations have welcomed the deals, which are expected to lower the prices of coffee, cocoa and bananas in the U.S. Now let's shift our focus to financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 Naira 440, Botswana 13 Pula 63, Kenya the dollar is 128 shilling 27, Zambia 22 Kwacha 55. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 Real 29, Russia 80 rubles 86, India 88 rupees 71, China 71.10, South Africa 17 rand 3 cents. $1 is 76 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Commodities, gold is trading at $4,172, platinum at $1,578 per ounce, the price of Brent crude oil at $63.65 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. The sound of Africa is evolving. Experience our new mobile app. Free to download, free to connect. Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Well, thank you to Chanduko Ligege with our business news. It is 12:45 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. The 7th Annual International Public Health Conference 2025 has wrapped up in Johannesburg, South Africa, bringing together leading health professionals, researchers, policymakers, and stakeholders from across the continent. A gathering organized by the Africa Institute of Public Health Professionals focused on building resilient health systems and accelerating progress toward universal health coverage in Africa. Our reporter Lebogang Mabange filed this.
The conference took place at a time when Africa continues to battle infectious diseases, rising non-communicable diseases, health worker shortages, and gaps in financing. Yet alongside these challenges are innovations and evidence-based solutions emerging from across the continent. This is according to Dr. Ayodele James from the Africa Institute of Public Health Professionals, who highlighted the urgency of this year's theme.
Our theme of this year, building resilient health system for universal health coverage in Africa. Progress, challenges, and way forward could not have been more timely. Across our continent, we continue to face multifaceted challenges, ranging from limited resources and fragile infrastructure to disease outbreak and inequality in health access. Yet, amid these difficulties, there are stories of innovation, courage, and collaboration that gives us hope.
He added that hope must translate into decisive action.
It is our collective responsibility as public health professionals to transform that hope into sustainable action. This conference provides invaluable platform for exchange of ideas, share best practices, and foster partnership that will move Africa closer to achieving universal health coverage.
One of the dominant themes was the urgent need to strengthen African-led research. Speakers emphasized that while Africa bears a significant disease burden, much of the published research on African diseases still comes from outside the continent. Conference Chair Professor Martha Chakiwa from Sefako Makgatho Health Sciences University in South Africa raised concerns about the ownership of African data.
Research and science conducted in Africa is still very relevant because all the diseases, or most of the diseases that are prevalent and discussed and published on, are actually happening in Africa. And now, as researchers in Africa, are we responsible for the writing or the documentation of everything that's happening in Africa? No.
She further noted that despite financial constraints and limited access to high-profile journals, African researchers must push to tell their own stories.
Research has shown that of all the diseases that are happening in South Africa or in Africa in general, such as tuberculosis, malaria, and Ebola, most of the research on these diseases is actually published in the Global North by 9 African authors. And why is it like that? I know we've got other restrictions which comes from monetary restrictions or access restrictions to high-profile journals, but are we trying? So this conference is meant to put together African researchers, African scientists that are passionate about Africa and coming up with African solutions for African problems.
Researchers from across the continent also presented new findings ranging from disease surveillance to health technologies. Among them was Nigerian pharmacist and researcher Samson Emelike, who highlighted vaccine delivery challenges in resource-limited settings.
In resource-constrained countries, one major challenge is last-mile delivery of vaccines. You will agree with me that vaccines, just like any other products, good products, if they are not delivered at the point that they are needed, we wouldn't be fulfilling the functions of logistics.
As Africa continues its journey towards stronger and more equitable health systems, this conference serves as a reminder that solutions must be African-led and grounded to collaboration. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update, only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Well, we say happy Friday to Mateko. She is here, the Upside team. And hello, how are you today?
I'm feeling great and unfortunately still running the show solo because my co-host is out enjoying the outdoors.
Oh, yes, his favorite place in the world.
His favorite place on the planet.
Yep.
Okay, 10 minutes to go till it's 2, and then on the other side of the news bulletin, we kickstart the show. It's a Friday. We always have music coming through, but also we're going to be looking at the 99 People Summit for Global Economic Justice that is scheduled to take place from the 20th to the 22nd of November at Constitution Hill here in Johannesburg. So we're going to look at movements of people and people gathering. I mean, it's that time of the year. So that's what we're going to do.
All right. All that and more coming up at the top of the hour on The Upside. That's The Upside with Matsiko. And Debucho is out. He will be back next week. And it is Friday. As you heard, it's all about music, music, music. So get ready with the dancing shoes. Well, we continue on Africa Update. It is 12:51 Central African Time. And we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa.
Gratitude begins with a story. Find yours on Channel Africa. Now streaming on our new website and mobile app.
Well, the latest findings revealed at the 58th Sakendu Symposium shows that there is a concerning rise in alcohol and drug use among young people in South Africa. The Gauteng province accounted for more than half of all admissions to substance abuse treatment centers across the country. teenagers between the ages of 15 to 19 makes up 26% of all admissions in the province, up from 19% in the previous reporting period. To discuss this further, we are joined on the line by Nancy Hornsby, and she is a senior scientist from SAMRIC's Mental Health, Alcohol, Substance Use and Tobacco Research Unit. Nancy, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you and your viewers.
Nancy, I mean, these are shocking figures. I mean, 26% of all admissions in the province, age group between 15 and 19 years old. It would be interesting to also find out what makeup this is, whether what percentage are female and what percentage are male. You know, tell us more about the South African Community Epidemiology Network on Drug Use Symposium and how the study was conducted.
Right, so Sekendu is an ongoing surveillance system. So we provide ongoing drug surveillance on treatment admissions for substance abuse across the 9 provinces in South Africa. So we identify emerging trends, what are new substances of choice that people are using, what substance is being replaced by, because we look at the trends over the years. So really that's what it's about, so that we are preemptive in our response instead of always being reactive. So we use it to have more of a predictive stance on where to focus or target services. So that's really, in a nutshell, what the study or the project is, and the purpose of it. So we cover, as I said, all 9 provinces, who have about 82% coverage of treatment centres. So the system is voluntary. Treatment centres provide their treatment data to us, so based on different questions that we've designed on. We have a standardized data collection form that treatment centres complete, and that's how the information is then fed through into our system. We curate and analyze and then disseminate the information.
Now, let's talk about, some of the factors that play or lead the youth to becoming hooked on drugs, and just the results of the study in terms of drug users and the amount of drugs used.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the profile, so as you said earlier, 15 to 19 years, that's the main age group, and that age group have overtaken the age groups that we've seen in previous years. So where they tended to be mostly young adults to young adults. It's now mainly adolescents, and we've seen this trend in the last 3 periods. So we report our data by 6 monthly periods. So over the last year and a half, we see this alarming trend among adolescents, and it's mostly males who are accessing treatment for substance misuse. Males with a high school level education. So that high school level education doesn't refer to their current grade. That refers to the highest level of education that they've completed. So it's males with a high school level education. They are mostly unemployed. About 50% are unemployed. And just over a quarter, 26%, are high school learners. So you see, of these youths, half are unemployed. So that's really the profile that we see. And we know that it's not to say that the problem is any less bigger among females. It's that females tend to underutilize treatment access. Because remember, this data is around treatment access, individuals who access treatment.
Just for interest's sake, do you also look at race?
We do, but we don't report on it because, you have to be very careful. So it really has to have meaning. Because we do see that, in Gauteng, for example, it's mostly Black African individuals that are admitted. Same for Western Cape, where it's mostly coloured individuals that are admitted to treatment or seek treatment. But we are a bit careful with the race variables because of all the connotations around it, and it could be simply because of the population makeup.
All right. Do you also find that we look at what is this, the hookah pipe? Why is it a cause for concern? And just are these young people being targeted? How do they get into drugs?
Well, let me answer the first part of the question. The reason for a lot is the health consequences associated with hookah pipe. Now, there's this misguided conception that it's healthier. There's been this idea that it's healthier because it uses water, all sorts of beliefs or misguided beliefs around hookah pipe. But we do know that hookah pipe is associated with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, emphysema, lung disease, asthma. Because of the toxins, the hookah pipe contains, a high concentration of toxins like carbon monoxide and nicotine. Add to that sharing of the mouthpiece. So now you have an increased risk of disease like TB, herpes. So that's the harms that we found that's linked to hookah pipe, but we do need more long-term data or studies.
Okay. And because of time, I just have to come in there and wrapping up 15 seconds. What do you do with this information?
We disseminate on various platforms. So our information is fed through to the Department of Social Development, the National Department of Health. We also feed it through to international fora. So the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, the WHO report, World Status Report on alcohol and drugs. All of that information is taken from Sakendo on the South African stats.
Nancy, thank you so much for joining us. We leave it there for today. That's Nancy Hornsby, a senior scientist from Sakendo, SAMRC's Mental Health, Alcohol, Substance Use and Tobacco Research Unit. And that's how we wrap Africa Update today and for the week. It's been a great one. Let's do this again on Monday. Continue with us on our socials. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
We are on OpenView's audio bouquet. Channel 628. SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Looking at your latest news this hour. With just a week before the start of the G20 Leaders Summit in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa says he is happy at the country's preparedness to host the meeting of the most industrialized nations. He was speaking to media during a walkabout at the Walter Sisulu Square of Dedication in Soweto, south of Johannesburg. Ramaphosa led the CEO's cleanup campaign ahead of the summit together with the Johannesburg City Mayor, Dada Morero. He later visited the summit venue, the Nasrec Expo Center, to see its state of readiness. The president says so far he is happy with the work that has been done.
I'm happy with the work that is being done. There are only 7 days to go before the G20 Leaders Summit, and I'll be going now to where the summit is going to take place to go and see the level of preparedness. But so far, so good. And I'm glad that work is not only being done in the city precinct, it's being done in the greater Johannesburg area, also where our people live. And I am confident, having met with the team that is working on revamping Johannesburg that this is not a flash in the pan. This is not a once-off process. It will continue even after the G20.
The Palestine Embassy in South Africa has advised its people from Gaza to be vigilant when engaging organizations or any unofficial intermediaries when traveling for whatever reasons. In a statement, the embassy says travel arrangements of the group of over 100 people who arrived in South Africa yesterday seeking refuge status was arranged by an unregistered and misleading organization. The embassy says this organization exploited the tragic humanitarian conditions of the people in Gaza, deceived families, collected money from them, and facilitated their travel in an irregular and irresponsible manner. However, the embassy has appreciated the sovereign and human decision of the South African government to grant 90-day entry visas for those who opted to stay in the country. Furthermore, the South African Zionist Federation has categorically rejected the torrents of baseless accusations surrounding the group of Palestinians initially denied entry at the Johannesburg Ora Tambo International Airport yesterday. The Federation says politicians and the media repeated the inflammatory claims that Israel deliberately withheld passport stamps to sabotage asylum seekers. The Federation calls it a toxic narrative that did not appear spontaneously but lit by one man who is the gift of the givers, Imtiaz Suleiman. In a statement released, the Federation says Israel abolished physical passport stamps for all foreign visitors more than a decade ago, replacing them with a standard electronic entry or exit slip. Every traveler received the slip without any exception. The UN Human Rights Council is holding a special session on the situation in Al-Fashir, Sudan today, in which states will consider a request for a fact-finding mission on reported mass killings at the city in Darfur that fell to paramilitary forces. The fact-finding mission, included in a draft resolution, would also seek to identify the perpetrators of violations allegedly committed by the Rapid Support Forces and their allies in Al-Fashir. In his opening address to delegates, the UN Human Rights Chief has urged the international community to act swiftly. And lastly, a rocket owned by the Amazon founder Jeff Bezos has successfully launched from Florida on its first flight for a paying customer. It was carrying 2 NASA satellites bound for Mars, where they'll collect information about its climate. The BBC's Aina Islam.
Lift-off detected. Transmotion.
That's the moment the New Glenn rocket blasted off from Cape Canaveral in Florida. It successfully deployed NASA satellites that will reach Mars in 22 months to measure the planet's atmosphere and magnetic field. It's the first science payload Blue Origin has launched for a paying customer, and the company had another breakthrough too, when 9 minutes into the flight, the reusable booster powering the rocket separated and touched down on a floating barge in the Atlantic Ocean.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African perspective. Time to stay informed, inspired,